Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Hey, welcome. My name is Jedley, and this is Reading with Your Kids. Coming to you with love from the historic neighborhood of Reedville, tucked into the southwest corner of beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. Our mission here is all about connection, connecting kids with books, families with each other, and communities through the power of story. Every episode, we're joined by incredible authors and creators who work lights up kids' lives. You can support this mission by spreading the word. Share the show with your friends, give us a shout out at school, and let folks know that they can find us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, CastBox, Audible. Pretty much anywhere you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We have a heartwarming show lined up for you, so let's get started. Today, Ashley Iman is here to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called Ruby Renee Always Gets Her Way. And later in the show, Dana Sutton is here to celebrate her picture book, Maddie Finds Her Place. Hey, my friends, I want you to meet Corky the Quirky Cow, the most musical cow you'll ever meet. Corky has a magical gift. She can mimic every animal on the farm. Pigs, ducks, chickens, you name it. Together with her friends, Corky creates a barnyard symphony so enchanting that Farmer Ken starts hosting concerts. Written by Lavelle Carlson, Corky the Quirky Cow is more than just a funny farm tale. It's a powerful tool for speech therapists, teachers, and parents to help build early language, articulation, and phonological skills. Through her fun-filled storybook adventures, Corky the Quirky Clown helps young readers boost their speech and language skills with laughter and learning. And guess what? She's offering a free downloadable book, Eek! I Hear a Squeak. It's perfect for parents, teachers, and speech therapists. You can get yours today at slpstorytellers.com. The Daytime Began, beautiful new picture book by Mary Ellen Roberson. Available at maryellenroberson.com.
In the dawn of the world, when colors were born, a gentle voice whispered, let there be more. From mountains to rivers and skies up so blue, the daytime began. Oh, what a beautiful view. With every beat of the heart, in the breeze of the land, nature was singing as life took a stand. Oh, the wonders, the colors, the creatures so bright, in the pages of a story that brings pure delight. With every turn of the leaves, can you feel the cheer? The daytime began, let's celebrate here.
Sick Days just got spectacular. In Charlotte and Penelope and the neighborhood stage, two sisters are stuck inside until their animal friends put on the show of the year. Meet a dolphin band leader, a tap-dancing rabbit, and the loudest geese you've ever heard. It's a rhyming, rollicking, read-along adventure your kids will absolutely love. You can find Charlotte and Penelope and the Neighborhood Stage by Teresa Argenbright wherever books are sold. Join us right now from right outside of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new picture book. Is called Ruby Renee Always Gets Her Way. Please welcome to the show, Ashley Iman. Hey, Ashley, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here.
Delighted to have you on. Ashley and I just had a great 10, 15-minute conversation about the D.C. area. She grew up in a county that I perform. She's young enough. She may have seen one of my shows. Maybe.
I probably did.
Yeah. I'm excited to have you on. Let's talk about Ruby Renee. This is a pretty special young person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She is So funny, so excited. I am just so happy that we get to continue to follow her journey as she, continues to navigate having so much to say,
There are many kids in my life that I knew. My son being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think his unspoken motto was, "Why use one word when there's 75 that I could also use?"
Absolutely. I love that.
Is Ruby based on any one child, or is it a conglomeration of many of the talkative children you've known?
It's definitely a conglomeration, right? Like she started as me, but the more I started to write, I thought about all of the little talkative girls that I had in my class, the way that they pushed me, the way they made me better teacher. And so I just definitely need to put like all the different personalities into one character.
That's excellent. Come to think, my daughter wasn't very talkative when she was a kid because she had an older brother who, used all the words and not for her. But as she grew, she used to come out and tour with me and perform with me, and we'd be on the road for 3 weeks at a time, and it was wonderful. And one of the things that made it so wonderful is, number one, she's 15, 16 years old and choosing to get in a van with her dad and travel around the country for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The conversations we had were so wonderful and fun and challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I had a very similar relationship with my dad. My favorite thing about him is that he would give me book lists, right? Like, here's the list of the books that you need to read this month. And then we would go get a coffee and then just talk about the books. I still remember our conversations about Voltaire and Plato. Like, my dad is a lawyer, so he loves philosophy. And I love it. I still get to go home and like peruse his bookshelf to see like, okay, what's the new thing I'm reading now? And yeah, I think that also really encouraged me to feel like, yeah, I can share. I have so much to share with the world, and I'm not afraid to like speak my mind.
So true. We didn't, my daughter and we did read books together. We didn't read Voltaire. It was, one of the most memorable ones was Truman Capote in Cold Blood.
Mm-hmm.
That led to a month of conversations.
I can imagine.
So what's the story we're going to experience in Ruby Renee Always Gets Her Way?
Yes. Okay. So Ruby, at the end of our last book, Ruby was able to find a really creative outlet with the help of the adults in her life. And she is leading those morning announcements. She's sharing her facts and she's not getting in trouble. Things are going well. Now she has to learn how to share the mic, right? She's going to get a co-host on her morning announcements. It doesn't go well. And now she has to learn a new lesson and get some more help from the adults in her life to figure out how she can continue to share what she has to say, but also make space for other people to share too.
Boy, that is a tough lesson for kids to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we get a new character and I love her. She's so spunky and equally excited about sharing what she has to say too. And I think it's wonderful that Ruby has, through her own challenges, created this new space. But, when you create a new avenue, that doesn't mean that you get to hold the spotlight all the time, right? There are other people who also, want to, share what they have to say.
Yeah. You mentioned, and your eyes really lit up when you mentioned new character. Was this a character that just kind of came to you as you were writing the second book, or had you planned her or him out for a long time?
No, I had not planned them, but as I was trying to think about like who would be a good kind of like challenge for Ruby, I just got really excited about that, right? I think my favorite people in my life are the ones who challenge me, who make me better. And so this character is so funny and I think just as like courageous and brave as Ruby is, then I've just been really excited, and having a lot of fun writing her.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of fun as characters kind of pop into your mind from out of nowhere, and to talk, because I don't think people who aren't creating or aren't actively creating don't understand. Talk a little bit about that. Like here you are, you're writing this book. It's Ruby, and then all of a sudden this new character comes in, taps in, and goes, "Yo, I'm here."
Yeah, I think so many of the characters in the books are like based off of real people in my life, and so as I'm thinking about them, I think about like the values or like the role that they play first, and then that kind of builds out like their personality and like who they are. And the funny thing is like the last thing I think about is the name. Like that's the last thing I think about. It's all about like who are you as a person? What role do you play in this in this world? And then I'm like, okay, now I got to name you. Like I have a very clear picture in my head of who this person is, and now I put a name to them. And then it's really nice when the illustrator takes that description, and then I can see it. Like when I see the character drawn the first time, it's like, wow, how did you do that? Because I am not an artist. Like I'm creative, but I'm not creative in that way. And it's just really cool to see someone be able to read the words and then like create the picture of that person.
Yeah, yeah. I too am amazed at people who are visual artists. It just it is a talent that has escaped me with completely, and it is just wonderful. It's like, how did you crawl inside my brain and come up with that?
Exactly. I don't know how Gladys does it, but she has done such a wonderful job. The character looks exactly like what I was imagining.
Now, did you have the experience with Gladys that I hear most authors who are traditionally published have, which is there's little to no conversation at all? Yeah,
they selected her. They, gave her the manuscript, and then she just got to work. And when they sent over, like the dummy, right, like the sketch dummy, so I could take a look and see, is this what you were thinking? And I had no notes. I said, how did she do this? It's exactly what was in my mind. So she's just such an incredible artist.
Now, in that time when you were waiting to get those dummies, was that a kind of a nail-biting time? Like, oh, what if she's a
little bit, because I especially was concerned about like, this character is South Asian, right? Southeast Asian. I am not Southeast Asian, right? So I have a picture in my mind, but I'm not sure exactly how it's going to come. And so I think I was a little bit more nervous about Yanine than I was about Ruby, because Ruby, I kind of knew, like in my mind, she's going to look like me, right? But in this other character, I was like, oh God, like I have this vision, but I want to make sure that I'm like, doing the Southeast Asian community justice and like making sure that she looks, really authentic. And again, Gladys nailed it.
All right. Well, let's give a great shout out to Gladys. What's her full name?
Yeah, Gladys Jose. We are so grateful for you. Honestly, you're incredible.
Now, have you had a chance to meet Gladys yet?
Not in person. We've had lots of conversations, but not in person.
Okay. Well, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you and I were talking before we started recording. You have a long history as an educator. You're still an educator. You're still both in your day job, but also you're educating kids through the Ruby Renee series. First, let's talk about that. How did that feel going from teaching in the classroom to now teaching through the pages of a book?
I think that one, it's exciting because I'm switching content, right? I'm a math teacher. I don't still currently teach math, but I think once you teach math, you always teach math. And so like this is new for me. I also taught middle school. Like my middle school kids are not really reading Ruby. And so it's a different, demographic. And I think that has been a real shift for me. But it's been really nice because the joke I always got as a middle school teacher is like, I don't present as a middle school teacher. I was a little too bubbly to be middle school. I think middle school kids deserve bubbly, fun teachers too. But that was not the impression that I gave off as a middle school teacher. And so, like, in some ways, like, and I feel like I'm coming home. Like, when I go read books in an elementary school, they're like, oh, yeah, like, this is where you're supposed to be. And this has been really, really nice.
So I guess the question is, as a middle school math teacher, what in the world possessed you to decide, well, I'm going to write a book that has nothing to do with math and it's going to be for little kids?
No, I think part of it is that I always wanted to write. Like I always found myself to be a creative for like I really like creative writing. I also didn't want to be a math teacher. I kind of fell into being a math teacher. My degree is in counseling. I was actually supposed to be a school counselor, and I was, working in Baltimore City public schools, and we lost a math teacher. They asked me to sub, and I said, okay. Like I thought, it was just like a 1 or 2 day thing while they found a new teacher. And I just fell in love with that group of kids. And I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to actually get good at it. And, went back and, took the certification to be a math teacher. And so that's why in some ways it does kind of fit, right? Like I never intended to do this other thing, but I loved the children so much. And I thought like, I want to do them justice. And so I kind of kept in that vein.
You just mentioned that you taught in the Baltimore City schools, and before we started, you shared with me that you teach in the DC public school. Challenging school district. I performed in Baltimore City, and I performed in a couple in DC. Do you like the challenge of teaching inner city kids?
I love it. Our children, I work for KIPP DC, and it is one of the best places to work. And I've always said it's my favorite place to work. I love our children. I love our families. I just think that there's certainly some challenges. I think teaching anywhere is challenging right now. But to come to work every day with people who are just so excited, and passionate about educational equity, I can't imagine working anywhere else.
Now, KIPP is a chain isn't the word, but it's
charter. We're a charter school, yeah, but a charter public school. We're still a public school system.
Yep. So, and I know that there are KIPP academies here in Boston. So you're all over the country or East Coast.
Yeah, all over the country. Basically, any major city there is a KIPP school.
Yeah. So, as the husband of a public school, traditional public school teacher, who has lots of friends who are traditional public principals. If you mention charter schools to some of these people, it's like, either put the cross, get the garlic.
I know.
What's the? I don't get it because I as I shared with you, my kids went to Catholic school. I love that we had the choice to be able to do that, and I know there are a lot of charter schools here in the Boston area that are really innovative, and they're doing different things, and they're serving different types of kids. Not everyone is going to flourish in certain schools. So what's the beef with charter schools? Why do so many public school people I know say, nah, I don't like charter schools?
Think that there's always going to be some strong feelings when it comes to education because we're talking about our children, right? I think that is a completely normal reaction. I think when it comes for me, I think it's all about choice. I want families to be able to choose what makes the most sense for them. I've worked in public schools, I've worked in private schools, and I chose to, in my career, I don't plan on going anywhere else, in a charter school, specifically KIPP, because I really just believe in the work that we do. I love the really deep investment in our kids and our families. I love the strong investment in our alumni, and that kind of really translates to our alum coming back, right? Right before I got on this call, I was talking to one of my incoming resident teachers, someone who is going to be training to be a teacher next school year, who is a KIPP alum, right? And we see that so often. And so I want everyone to make the choice that makes the most sense for them. And I'm just so grateful that our network in DC is just we're deeply rooted. We're making sure people, our kids and our families have an excellent education, full stop.
I'm happy. We have a lot of educators that listen to the show and a lot of parents who care deeply about their kids' school education. I find so many, a couple of things that just baffled my mind. In my beautiful wife's school, they would send sometimes kids who were misbehaving, that couldn't handle them in the upper grades. They would send them to her classroom. She would get them helping the kids, and this problem all of a sudden now is a role model and doing great. And I said, why don't you sit down with the administration and work with them and say, give this kid something to look forward to. Let your classroom be a reward, not a punishment. And administration's like, no, that's not how we do things here. And it baffled me. And at the same time, it baffled me that I don't see a lot of public schools really reaching out to their alumni and involving them. The high school I went to, I just went to my 50th high school reunion the other day. We are very involved in that school, and it shows, because the school I went to the other day wasn't the school I attended. There's new stadiums and swimming pools and theaters and all this other kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, we care a lot about alumni involvement, right? Like just last Saturday, I got to volunteer what we call the family reunion. And it's essentially where all of our alumni, all of our current families, you come back. It's a big party. It's like a cookout style. Like we want you to know that you go to KIPP, even if you go to KIPP for a year, you are a part of our family. And so, yes, I think it is so important to build that kind of community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. There's so much talent out there. Mm-hmm. And if you're, imagine you're a math teacher in middle school and you're having a challenge to maybe motivate one or two kids, but you know in your alumni that there is an engineer.
Yes.
Somebody that's using what you're teaching to make a great living, build incredible things, make a difference in life. I think a lot of those kids who weren't listening to you might perk up a little bit more after a visit from an alumni like that.
Absolutely. Oh, goodness. Hi, Pup.
It's adorable. Your puppy can hang out. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing schools today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there are a couple of things. One, I think that schools are really having a hard time keeping up with the with the way that our world is changing, right? I think that we're having lots of debates right now in the DC area about cell phone use. And I think that there's something to be said about making sure that our kids, have a distraction-free work environment, right? They can, actually focus on the task at hand. But I also think that, like, even when I was in school, we did not have, like, cell phones in the way that our kids have cell phones, right? So we have to make sure that we're adapting. But then I also really think that I really don't want to get super political, but, like, unfortunately, our families don't have the same time that they had, to invest in their children, like that we had, like when I was growing up, right? Families are having to work more. They're having to work multiple jobs. Hours are longer. There's just more expectations. And I think that if we're ultimately going to have a really high quality education for kids, that doesn't just happen in the school, right? We have to be all integrated and working together. And that's just really hard to do if you're, struggling to, make ends meet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's, one of the reasons I launched Reading with Your Kids. It was mainly because I know that the bond I have with my now adult kids, which is one built on a foundation of reading together, and I know that it brought great joy into my life. And I remember nights driving after performing in, say, Philadelphia in the morning and then driving through New York City traffic and Connecticut traffic back to Boston. The last thing I thought I wanted to do was now I have to sit down and read and be entertaining. But boy, I did it, and I was really happy after every one of those. Because it was like I got re-energized and I got to snuggle with my kids.
Yeah, absolutely. That is important, right? I talk about the book list with my dad, reading with my mom. Like all of that is just so crucial, I think, to making sure that students develop a love of learning, and ultimately can I think be more invested in their own education.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there going to be a third, maybe fourth, fifth, sixth?
Hope so. We're working on a couple of things, so I really hope that we can continue to follow Ruby, and maybe you'll even see her in other places. We'll see. We
talking animation?
hopefully let's get the right people hearing that, because I think that we need, to see more children curious about the world around them. I miss like a Magic School Bus type show, right? We need something like that for our children.
Yeah, I love it. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Ruby Renee. Always gets her way, and Ruby Renee has so much to say, and they should also get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, you can always follow me on Instagram. It's just at Ashley Iman. There's a period in between the Ashley and Iman. You can also join me on my website. It's ashleyIman.com. You can find our books wherever books are sold, but we're always going to tell you to support your local bookstore. But yeah, I'd love to, connect with you all, and I can't wait for you to see everything that Ruby's up to.
Yeah, and we also encourage people to go to their local public library. Even if you buy the book yourself, go to the library and request the book so that more families have access to wonderful Ruby Renee.
Awesome. I could not agree more.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Ruby Renee Always Gets Her Way. It's a brand new sequel, a picture book from our guest, Ashley Iman. Ashley, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. My friends, if you have ever thought about owning a business that's fun, rewarding, and makes a valuable contribution to kids' education, well, Brooklyn Robot Foundry is calling your name. I recently met Jenny Young. She's the founder of Brooklyn Robot Foundry. And let me tell you, she is incredible. Her passion for getting kids excited about STEAM, that's STEM plus art, it's contagious. I'm telling you. This isn't your average kids program. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is all about hands-on, screen-free STEAM fun. These kids get to build a different robot each class and take it home with them afterwards. Kids love it. Parents are raving about it. And now you can own a franchise and bring this incredible experience to families in your community. Now, this isn't your typical franchise. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is a mobile, flexible business with a deep curriculum that's making a real impact in schools and communities around the country. Franchise owners get a proven curriculum, full training, and support from a passionate team. So what are you waiting for? Please visit bit.ly/RobotJed. That's bit.ly/RobotJed. And let them know you heard about it on Reading with Your Kids. Hey, my friends, would you like to bring a little warmth and magic into your home? Let me introduce you to Welsh Mountain Candles, hand-poured on a working Amish farm in Lancaster County. These all-natural, toxin-free candles are made from palm wax with a stunning crystallized glow, rich coconut apricot wax for a creamy finish, and essential oils for a pure, refreshing scent. Whether you're winding down, setting the mood, or just love a great candle, Welsh Mountain Candles are crafted with care and made to be shared. Visit welshmountaincandles.com. Use the promo code JED10 for 10% off your order today. Light up your home with Welsh Mountain Candles, where every candle tells a story. Join us right now from beautiful British Columbia in the beautiful nation of Canada. Our guest is here today to celebrate her picture book. It's called Maddie Finds Her Place. Please welcome to the show, Dana Sutton. Hey, Dana, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Jed. How are you doing this morning?
I'm wonderful. British Columbia, It's a place I've heard so much about. I have a dear friend and mentor that lives on Vancouver Island. I am just told it is a magical place.
Yeah, we live in a pretty great place to be for sure. We've got about 150 lakes within an hour and a half of us in any direction. We're on a valley floor in the middle of the mountains. We're sort of right in the middle of wine country as well for BC. So it's a pretty great place to be.
Yeah, I really have enjoyed. I haven't been to Western Canada as of yet. As I told my beautiful wife, we've been to every part of Canada that we want to drive to, from Boston. But it's a beautiful, beautiful country. It's also, the people are also really beautiful.
Yeah, we enjoy it. We've traveled all across Canada, and everywhere we go, people are really friendly and outgoing, and it's a nice place to be for sure.
Excellent, excellent. So tell us about Maddie Finds Her Place. Who is Maddie, first of all?
So Maddie really is my adopted daughter, and I met Maddie when she was 16, almost 17 years old. She had been living in a place called Penny Lane Homeless Shelter here, which is a youth homeless shelter, and was under the care of the Ministry of Children and Family Services. And she came to me under what's called a youth agreement in Canada. And what that is when the ministry has determined that it's not safe and or productive for a child to go back into their family, but they feel that they're of an age where it would be pretty difficult to bring them into fostering and that kind of thing. They put them on a youth agreement where the ministry basically pays their room and board somewhere. And then that child moves in with that family, and effectively you're supposed to be a landlord for the kids. And when Maddie moved in, initially we didn't have a lot of interaction, as I was at the time, my adult children had moved out. They were all off at school. I was divorced. I had with myself and my two dogs in a big 5-bedroom house. And I had thought, well, I'll rent out a couple of the rooms to students and put some money aside for renovations. And then the Boys and Girls Club here approached me and said, would you be interested in taking one of these kids on a young adult agreement or youth agreement? And at the time I sort of questioned it, and I said, well, tell me about this person you have in mind, and if they had any sort of criminal issues or criminal background. And no, she hadn't had any. So does she have any addiction problems or anything like that? No addiction problems. And we just kind of went through the list of things that, in my experience with teenagers, can sometimes generate those kinds of problems with their family. And the answer to all of them was no. She hadn't had any of these issues. And I sort of paused for a minute and I said, so really what you're telling me is that she comes from a family that has its own problems? And they said yes. And I said, okay, well, bring her by and we'll meet her. And I met her. I actually met her the day that she was having her wisdom teeth out. So she was a little bit loopy, but we had some conversations, and I said, yeah, let's bring her in. So she joined me at that point, and then over the next few years, we developed a different relationship. It became a mentoring relationship first, and then a parenting style relationship. And ultimately, I had remarried, and we ended up adopting Maddie. So she is my daughter.
Well, that is wonderful, and I always take time to salute and thank people who choose to adopt or foster. It's a tremendous gift that you give to Maddie, and I'm sure you're going to say it was a tremendous gift for you. It's a beautiful thing. I know here in the United States, we average between 360 to 400,000 kids in foster care. And so there's a real need for people to be adoptive parents and to be foster parents. And there's a real need for us who aren't in a place to adopt or foster to support those families that are making those choices. So I just want to tip my hat to you. Thank you for that. And I can't wait to hear more about what Maddie inspired you to write about.
All right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. But as you said, Maddie has brought as much, if not more, to our lives than we've brought to hers. She's been a really good addition to the family, and we're really proud of her. She's come a long way in the years she's been with us. So we initially, when it came to writing the book about Maddie, I initially wanted to write a book so that other children like her could see themselves represented in a children's book and not feel quite so isolated and see themselves. But the really interesting thing was I wrote the book initially and I sent the story to Maddie and I just asked her, I said, you know, this is your story. People will know it's you and we don't have to publish it. It's up to you, right? You can decide whether we want to pursue this. I said, if you don't, we have other books we can pursue and move forward on. But I wrote this for you. And she called, at the time she was living in Edmonton and working up there. And she called me back a few hours later and said, well, I sobbed like a baby, but I want you to publish it. And so we started talking about it. And I told her why I'd written it. And she said, well, that's really nice, but we all know we're there. We can see each other. We recognize each other as kids when we're in those situations. We don't feel like we're alone. I want you to publish the story because I want other adults to know we're there. And so that became the focus of the illustrations and the sort of making it the children's book that we can, where parents will read to their children and maybe it'll twig with the parents as well that, you know, one of the questions I often get asked was, well, why did you help Maddie? And my response is always the same. Well, why wouldn't you? This was a teenager that was through no fault of her own in a very difficult situation. She'd gotten to 16 years old. She wasn't pregnant. She wasn't drug addicted. Didn't have a criminal history. She was still in school. Why wouldn't you help her if you could? And that for her was more important than, she said, the kids know we're out there. We see each other all the time. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a really interesting take. It really changed my focus as well as I was thinking of the story within the story, you know, the pictures and the illustrations. And
well, I love that. I have a feeling that I would like Maddie a whole lot if I met her. And I guess I will meet her through the book. But, you know, one of the things that I love is the power that books have to be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And, you know, like you were saying, you know, I want kids to be able to see themselves, and that's really important. But being a very old white guy, I never had a problem where I wasn't represented in the books of pages of children's books. I really love the power that books have to be a window, and it sounds like Maddie feels the same way. It's so important for us to be able to look through the window and to get a peek into other people's cultures and lives and struggles.
Yeah, I really agree. I think it's a really great way to reach both children and adults. Especially, it's one of the reasons why I've focused on children's books up until this point is because I think, you know, we as adults never stop learning. And some of the best lessons we learn are while we're teaching our children. So,
well, we'll hope that people don't stop learning. I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I'm going to think positively and agree with you that we all should continue to learn.
Should is probably the right response. We all should continue learning. Yes.
You know, in your book, Maddie faces some really tough challenges. Why is it important for you to show kids that it's okay to struggle sometimes?
I think in Maddie's book, I wanted to show the resilience she had to have for herself. She really had to keep going when things were difficult. She didn't have a lot of support. As I said, in real life, she didn't come to my house until she was 16, almost 17 years old. She'd spent a lot of life being shuffled around from home to home, couch surfing sometimes, in and out of the homeless shelter, in and out of foster care. And it took an immense amount of strength to get her to the point where she was 16 without all of these additional complications. And that resilience that she showed was what convinced me that this was a kid worth helping. You know, I was a tutor for 30 years and I've coached sports and I've, you know, taught kids and done all kinds of work with teenagers and young children. And that was what really struck me when I met Maddie was this was a kid who had to be really, really strong to get through as far as she did on her own. And I wanted that message out there that, hey, hang in there, be strong. The people are out there that can help you. You just have to hang in long enough to find them. And that was one of the things we really focused on in the illustrations for Maddie, was that if you look at each page, the lady, quote unquote, that adopts her in the end is in the background of every image somewhere. They're not interacting, they're not seeing each other, but she's there in the background. And that was the message I wanted those children to receive, was that there are people there. It's a matter of finding the right person to ask for help.
I love too that, you respond when people ask you, why in the world would you take this on? And your question was, why in the world wouldn't I? I love that. And I hope that's something that people, when they're adults, when they're reading this book to their kids, hear themselves. Why am I not reaching out to help these kids?
Yeah, there's so many opportunities, and it's not just in fostering or adopting, but as I said, I was a tutor for 30 years, working with high school students and helping them deal with issues as they went through. And a large part of tutoring is really just mentoring. It's working through whatever social, emotional issues are upsetting you right now. Let's talk about those first. And now we've talked about that. Okay, now we can focus on the math that we're learning, or the English that we're writing, or whatever it is. So it's not just adopting or fostering either. There's so many different ways that adults can help children. Sometimes it's as simple as taking the time to go in and read in a classroom to kids, or, volunteering at the library, or coaching in the sports and that kind of thing. There's so many different ways. And, the world would be a much better place if we all stopped and said, how could we help, rather than what can we get?
Yeah. Amen to that. You were mentioning that there's the mom who adopts Maddie is always in the picture, in the background. How can parents or caregivers support kids when they're struggling in their hard moments?
I'll tell you that the honest answer is, the first step is usually bite your tongue a little. As I said, I've had Maddie, I've had 2 biological children. I also have a stepson. I've done a lot of parenting, especially through the teenage years. And often the first step is just take a deep breath, let the words sink in, listen to what they're saying, and pause before you respond. Because as an adult, we've learned so much in life, and our first response is often to spew the words. Let's get them out. We have to tell them what to do and give them the answer. And sometimes it's just, hang on, let's just pause for a minute and let them finish their thought and really think about what they're saying. And then our response has to give them the ability to fix the problem. And that's, my first book was called You Can Do Hard Things. And the message in that book is we need to let our children do the difficult things at every stage throughout their life. Because, what's hard when you're 4 might be the monster under the bed. And what's hard when you're 13 might be the friend that has abandoned you. And when you're a teenager, it's focusing on exams. But when you encourage your children and you give them the skills rather than the answers, they develop the confidence and the resilience they need to function as they get older and to address those difficult things and come through the other side of it. So I'm a really big believer in conversation, in not limiting topics. So I have had some doozy conversations with my children that I really would rather not have had. Maybe they were too much information, maybe whatever. I didn't need to know that. But having the conversation meant that I could help them with the problem, with coming up with a solution and encouraging them in achieving those solutions.
Boy, I just flashed back to a couple of very difficult conversations and very surprising conversations I had with my kids. And also flashing back to the look on my beautiful wife's face when those questions first arose. And we're like, how old are you asking me that question?
Yeah, it's like I said, sometimes the hardest step is just that first one where you just need to keep your mouth closed for a minute while your brain goes through what you'd like to say and reframes it all in a much more appropriate manner. So,
So what inspired you? You're very busy. You're coaching, you're tutoring, you're mentoring, you're riding motorcycles all over Canada. What inspired you to write a children's book?
um, well, as I said, I've got a lot of experience with teenagers. I've done a lot of tutoring and coaching and that kind of thing. And I had been told on several occasions, well, why you should write a parenting book. Like that'd be really neat. We think there's a lot of information that you can, and I've thought about it off and on, but I also own a full-time business. I've got, 8 employees. I've got grandchildren. There's so much on the go that sitting down and writing a full length parenting book and that kind of thing just seems like a little much on my plate. But the one day I was I was actually on my way to work during tax season. I own an accounting firm. So there's a period each year where I work 7 days a week, 12 to 16-hour days. And I walked to work during those periods, and I was walking to work and I thought, we could do the same thing in bit by bit in children's books. Mm-hmm. And so, as I said, as I was thinking about it that day, I thought, well, what's the very first thing you would want parents to know? And the very first thing I want parents to know is that it's not our job to solve their problems. It's our job to help them solve their problems. And that was the thought process behind the first book, which was, you can do hard things. And then Maddie's book, again, it was a case of, okay, what's the message in here? Well, the message is you have to be resilient. That's the message for the kids. And the message for the adults is, hey, step up, help. It's not difficult. It's not,
Not rocket science.
It's not rocket science. Exactly.
I love that. I'm hoping that message that you mentioned in the first book of it's not my job to solve your problem. It's my job to help you solve it. I hope that's very, very clear. In fact, I hope you wrote it as a quote because it is true. It's, I think for a lot of parents, their first instinct is to, sure, I can, whip out the wallet. I can take care of this. But it doesn't help kids because they're going to face another problem, and we can't just be bailing them out.
Yeah. Like I said, that was the reason I made that one the first book, was because I really feel like it is our job to help them learn to resolve issues. And, one of the things that I had learned from my parents was when I asked my parents a question, can I go to so-and-so's house this weekend and have a sleepover? My parents never said yes or no. They would say, well, do you have baseball this weekend? Yeah. Yeah, I have baseball. It's at this time or at this time. Okay. Do you have homework this weekend? Yeah, I've got some homework and I'm going to do it this way and I'm going to do it that way. Okay. Do we have any family events we have to attend this weekend? Oh, yeah, we have Nanny's birthday and it's on this time at this time. Okay. So do you have time to go to your friends? And then if we decided we had time, they let us go. Mm-hmm. So it was learning the process of how to make our own decisions. Mm-hmm. These are the questions you have to ask yourself. And that was something, like I said, that was really, really important to me to turn around and pass on, is that teach them how to make good choices, teach them how to solve their own problems, and let them grow that way. Because at the end of the day, and this is something when I've had conversations with people about it, was if I as a child look up and my parent solves every problem that comes up for me, the message I receive is that that parent doesn't believe in me. And if my parents don't believe in me, then how can I? Mm-hmm. And I think that generates a lot of, you see such escalated levels of anxiety in our young people and inability, they get out and they reach the first failure where there is nobody to step in and save the day, and they fall apart. And I really believe the source of that is this idea that, hey, if my mom and dad don't believe in me, then how can I?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. Now, in Maddie Finds Her Place, do we know her whole story? Do we know that she's a foster kid? Do we know that she's going to be adopted?
So no, it's a rhyming story for children, and it basically starts out with, Maddie was a little girl who didn't have a home. Her mom and dad had grown-up problems and left her all alone. And that was just kind of the start of it, because, I didn't want to get too in depth into what the problems were, because there's so many different problems that can happen in families that create these situations, that we didn't really want to focus on what's happened to make Maddie homeless. And then in the book, she goes along and she tries to live with the birds, but that doesn't work. And she tries to live with the bears, but that doesn't work either. And, she says, it's okay. I just need to hang on. And it shows a little bit about what it's like at school for her, where she's arriving and she looks pretty unkempt and she's not cared for. And she's seeing all these other kids whose parents are there and that kind of thing. And she just keeps telling herself, it's okay. I'll find it. I'll find it. And eventually she meets the lady that has the dogs that takes her in. So
beautiful. I love it. I typically ask an author what kind of conversations the author thinks a family can have when reading the book, and I'll ask you that. But one of the things I hope families are talking about is the question of how can we help?
Yeah.
There, like Maddie out there, how can we help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's such an important thing, right? In one illustration, and Nicholas, the illustrator of the books, he did an amazing job. But it's an illustration in the book of Maddie in the cloakroom at school, getting her shoes on. And as I said, she looks pretty unkempt and, her hair's not really brushed and she's struggling to tie her shoes. And there's other kids in there and the parents are all sort of helping their own children and everything else. And that's an opportunity as a parent to say, geez, maybe one of those parents should have helped Maddie. What do you think? And, that's an opportunity to talk to your children about, hey, when we see somebody who maybe looks a little bit out of place and feels a little bit out of place, what can we do to help make them feel better? Another thing that is sort of, Nicholas did a really good job of, is one of the experiences Maddie had expressed to me about her time was she only ever had what fit in her backpack. Mm-hmm. As she was moving from one location to another and one house to another, if it didn't fit in her backpack, she couldn't have it. And in the book, all the way through, everywhere Maddie goes, she's carrying her bag, because that's how she experienced her life. Her life was in that backpack, and she never really knew if she was going to get to go back to the same place again or not. And again, when children see that in other children, let's not make fun of them. Let's talk about it as parents, as we're reading this book, so our kids understand that sometimes other children need our support as well.
Yeah. Amen. And Maddie was lucky she had a backpack, because so many kids here in the States, all they have is a green trash bag to carry this stuff around. And what a horrible message that sends to kids.
It does. I mean, there's nothing that says you're worth nothing more than a green garbage bag full of your things each time you have to move.
Dana, where can we go to find out more about Maddie Finds Her Place and find out more about you?
So I've got a website up. It's danasuttonbooks.com. And all of the books are available there. It's got a list of the 2 books that are coming up next as well, that are in illustration. There's also some interesting articles. One we wrote that was called Lessons for My Children, which are the things I want my adult children to remember. And we're adding a new component to the website that one of my children came up with, which is we want to post the messages, the lessons we learned from you that you maybe didn't realize were lessons at the time. Because we think it's neat that you told us all these things, but there's these other things that we learned that you didn't think about, and they're just as important. So there's some neat things, and there's some activity pages on that as well. The books are available for sale through Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart.com, up here in Canada through Indigo, and some of the independent bookstores as well. So
wonderful. We've had a really great time speaking to the author of Maddie Finds Her Place. great new picture book from our guest, Dana Sutton. Hey, my friend, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the experience.
We are so glad you spent part of your day with us here at Reading with Your Kids. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please pass it on. Share the link, leave a 5-star review, and hit that subscribe button so you can join us next time. If you haven't already, please be sure to check out readingwithyourkids.com. It is the place for all things Reading with Your Kids, including learning how to be a guest, learning about our Certified Great Read program, and exploring amazing new books. Want to give a heartfelt thanks to today's guest, Dana Sutton. Please be sure to check out Maddie Finds Her Place. And Ashley Iman. Please be sure to check out Ruby Renee Always Gets Her Way. I want to thank my amazing behind-the-scenes team, Fatima Khan, Chris Starrity, Rory Grady, Elle Glassman, Dante Greco. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. And most of all, we want to thank you. You are helping to shape a kinder, smarter world every time you read with your kids. Until next time, keep reading, keep loving, and keep creating those magical moments together.